existing cell comes from the pre-existing cell. That means cell originates from the pre-existing cell. And in the same manner, Strasburger, who performed experiments on lots of plants, he discovered that nucleus also originate from the previous nucleus. That means nuclei come from the pre-existing nuclei by nuclear division. So now there are some terms in this chapter you are going to understand. These terms are amitosis, mitosis, chromatin. So these terms were given by Fleming. So something to do with your MCQ questions. Who introduced these words? Just remember, Fleming introduced 3 words: amitosis, mitosis and chromatin. Then cytokinesis. Now what is cytokinesis? Cell division is divisible into 2 parts. Karyokinesis, the next term, and the cytokinesis. What is karyokinesis? Division of the nucleus is called as karyokinesis. This term was introduced by Schneider. And the division of the cytoplasm is called as cytokinesis, and this term was given by the Weikman. And then Farmer and Moore introduced the term meiosis. So in this chapter you are going to learn first amitosis, followed by mitosis, and the last division to learn in details would be the meiosis. Now the first topic to discuss in this chapter is cell cycle. So what is cell cycle? It is also called as the generation time. Now what is generation time? The gap between one cell division to the next cell division be over is called as the time from the first cell division. That means there is a cell produced by previous cell. Now this cell will take some time and undergo some events, and finally it will divide to give rise to 2 cells. Now this whole time duration is called as the generation time, or is also called as the cell cycle. So a newly born cell which has come from the pre-existing cell by cell division will undergo certain changes, and time duration is required, and during that time the cell prepares itself for the same thing from which it is born, and that is what? Division. So it will also divide and will give rise to 2 cells. This whole sequential steps are called as cell cycle. Now for example, there are different cells having different duration of the cell cycle or the lifespan. So for example, 90 minutes for the yeast and 24 hours for the human skin cell. So generally science believe around 3 o'clock at the night our cells of the skin are dividing. So 24 hours the human skin cell requires to divide. Now how the cell divides, or how the cell enters into cell cycle and complete the whole process. So cell cycle is divisible into the phases. Now the first phase of cell cycle is called as the interphase. Now I think you remember in the nucleus topic I kept telling you interphase, nucleus. So now starts interphase topic. What is interphase? It's the longest part of the cell cycle. It may consume 95% of the total time of the cell cycle, and interphase is also called as intermitosis. Why? Because it is the gap between 2 mitoses. Because by one mitosis the cell you are studying is formed, and the next mitosis the cell you are studying is going to divide. So between 2 mitoses the gap is called as the interphase. 95% time of the cell cycle is consumed by interphase. Initially scientists used to call it as a resting phase or a non-dividing phase, because when you see through microscope you don't find much activities are going inside the cell, so it appears to be in a resting phase. But as science became advanced, computers, the microscopes and the staining technologies and all, they became advanced. It became clear to scientists that it is not the resting phase, but it is the most crucial phase. That's why the cell is consuming 95% of its time in this process. It is something like, we all know when there is an important function in the family like marriage or something, the marriage may require 1 day or 2 days, 3 days maximum, but the preparation starts 1 year back, or maybe 8 months back, or maybe 6 months back. So it's something like the same. The division process is a very small duration process, but the preparation will require a lot of time. That's why interphase is the preparatory phase for the cell to undergo division. Now interphase is divisible into 3 steps. So those 3 steps are G1, S and G2. So the first step is G1, second step or the subphase is S, and the third one is G2. Now I have mentioned for the human skin cell, which requires 24 hours to complete the cell cycle, that interphase lasts for 22.15 hours. So 22 hours and 15 minutes, and out of that G1 consumes 8 hours 15 minutes, S consumes 8 hours, and G2 consumes the 6 hours. Now what are this G1, S and G2? Let's understand. Please remember, there are some cells which have the longest interphase, for example the nerve cells, because once they are born or once they are formed as a young nerve cell, they will never divide at all anymore. So that's why they have the longest interphase in the mammals. Now what is G1, S and G2? Let's understand. G1 also stands for the gap 1.